As a boxing fan, there's always going to be fights on your wish list. Some fights are a lot easier to make than others. 2024 seems like it's been the best year for boxing in a long time, in terms of the fights we want being made, and that's mainly a result of the Turkey man himself. Mr. Turkey is already putting on an all-time great undercard in February in the Bivol vs Beterbiev 2 card. A few perfect matchups on that card already. We've also got the Benavidez vs Morel card. So there's a few dream matchups made already, and today we're going to go through my top 5 personal favourite fights to make this year, and our number 5 spot's going to go to Gervonta Tank Davis versus Teofimo Lopez. Tank versus Lomachenko was the original fight supposed to be on the cards, but obviously Lomachenko seems to be on his way out, as he recently pulled out of negotiations in a potential fight with Tank Davis. The other super fight on the cards was Shakur Stevenson versus Tank Davis, but promotional issues seem to be the main obstacle for that one, as well as Shakur just being difficult to negotiate with. Now Tank already does have a fight scheduled against Lamont Roach in March. The Roach fight does follow a pattern where Tank takes a fight that no one's really interested in. Tank's matchmaking has been deservedly criticised for a long time. We know he's going to beat Lamont Roach, but that's where the more interesting fights come in afterwards.
If you guys are saying you're the best, fight the best. This is the narrative now in boxing that I'm starting to see.
Enter Teofimo Lopez, who doesn't seem to be afraid of anyone. In general, fighters who take a loss are more willing to take risks afterwards. And despite being 3 years younger than Tank, he's taken much more risks. It also means he's had a less consistent career with his performances compared to Tank Davis. But regardless, they are champions in separate divisions. Tank is fully capable of fighting at £140. They're both young, they're both in their primes, they're both coming off decent performances, and they're both the two most explosive fighters in those two divisions. Not only would the fight itself be great, the build-up would be great. Teofimo Lopez would definitely be Tank's best name on his resume. So not only is this a chance for Tank to claim a belt in a separate division, it's also a chance for him to get his first elite win. And that takes us to number 4, Jesse Bam Rodriguez versus Fernando Puma Martinez. I think this is the most likely to happen by far out of all the fights on this list, since they're both champions in the same division, and Martinez is open to fighting on his own. Jesse Bam Rodriguez is as anytime, anywhere as it gets. He's got one of the best resumes in the lower divisions, only at the age of 24, having knockout wins over the likes of Rungvisai, dropping a division lower to fight the undefeated champion Sonny Edwards, recently being the first man to stop the legend Juan Francisco Estrada, and in his most recent performance, he put on a flawless 3rd round knockout victory over Pedro Guevara, and he seems to be getting better and better. And this is where Fernando Puma Martinez comes in. He's not a high profile name by any means, but I think he's the most dangerous fight for Rodriguez, below £118. The undefeated 17-0 Argentinian Fernando Martinez has a ferocious fighting style, one of the most entertaining styles in boxing. He throws punches with ridiculous heat, venomous punching power, and killer instinct. He's also a very skilled, capable boxer at the same time. He won his first world title in 2022 when he beat Joey Cajas, having 2 wins over him, and his most recent fight was his best performance to date, by dethroning the 4-division champion Kazuto Ioka by unanimous decision in enemy territory in Japan. So it will be interesting to see the matchup between the raw power and aggression of Martinez, and whether it can stand up to the talent and skill of Bam Rodriguez. And that takes us to number 3, Naoya Inoue versus Junto Nakatani. Inoue should not need any introduction, the most dominant force in the lower weights for the past 10 years. He's constantly going up in new weight classes, scoring knockouts and taking titles in the process. Since he's become undisputed for his 2nd time in his 2nd consecutive weight class at £122, he's been running low on opponents. He maintained his knockout streak in his last fight versus TJ Doney, who was forced to quit, and he's now officially booked for a fight versus Sam Goodman on the 24th of January. We know he's going to beat Sam Goodman, and since there's no worthy challengers at 122, someone at 118 needs to challenge him. Which is where Junto Nakatani comes in. Junto has also been taking belts, moving up in weight divisions and scoring knockouts, but he goes about it in a very different way to Inoue. While Inoue is more like a Terminator, tracking his opponents down, Nakatani is an extremely tricky, rangy southpaw, who's extremely good at utilising his range and straight punches on the back foot. As the number 1 fighter at 118, who's looking to move up as well, he could provide a completely different look for Inoue, and potentially give him issues he's never seen before. Which takes us to number 2, Terence Crawford versus Jaron Boots Ennis. While some people may put Crawford versus Canelo on this list, I prefer seeing more competitive matchups versus people in their actual weight class. Crawford took his last fight at 147 in a complete destruction versus Errol Spence Jr. in the biggest fight of his career. and he moved up to 154 to challenge Israel Madrimov, the undefeated champion at the time. Some people gave Crawford some slack for that performance, as it was a very competitive fight and the closest fight of Crawford's career so far. But I see Madrimov as the number 2 fighter at 154. A very tricky and capable fighter, and Crawford's still the man at welterweight, as he has been for years. Enter Jaron Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis is the most promising and talented fighter at 147. On his way to the top, it's rare to see such a massive amount of hype behind a prospect. He let his performances speak for themselves. Some people build him as the anti-Crawford. He's got wicked fast hands, crazy reflexes, knockout power, speed. He's one of the most impressive athletes in the sport. He's also flashy and entertaining, so he makes any bout that he's in a must-see fight. He's had some issues staying disciplined in fights, particularly his most recent performance versus Karen Chikadzian, so there are concerns that maybe Crawford's a step too far right now. However, in terms of potential, I think if he locks in, moves up to 154 as he should, takes a fight, looks good, disciplined and on point, I think a Terence Crawford fight at the end of the year is very viable and very realistic, and there's a potential passing of the torch moment to be seen. Which takes us to number 1, Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez. There's a whole discussion to be had about ducking, politics, negotiation, but that's boring and drawn out. It's a topic that's been done to death about this fight, and I'd rather talk about the fight itself. If you're Team Canelo, Team Benavidez, does not matter. If you're a boxing fan, you'll want this fight to happen. Canelo's matchmaking has not been as good as it used to be, but Canelo is still the king at middleweight, and it has been for about 6 years. If the throne is to be passed on, they have to beat Canelo. Canelo may be on the decline physically, but he's still never lost at 168 pounds. He's still the unified champion, and he's still got a massive legacy left behind. So a win over him at 168 would be monumental. One fighter that's been speculated to have the best chance to beat Canelo in that division for years has been David Benavidez. This fight has been on people's wish list for the past 4 years. I could have made this video a year ago, a year before that, and a year before that, and this fight could still be on there. David Benavidez is clearly one of the most talented, promising young middleweights in the past few years. Ridiculous fast hands for someone his size, endurance, crushing pressure, deceptively good boxing ability. He's a nightmare for a lot of opponents. He has made the move to light heavyweight, and he may be pursuing the Bivol or Better Beer fight instead, but he's still capable of moving back down to 168, and if a certain Saudi Arabian prince is willing to throw enough money at the both of them, I think the fight has a decent chance of happening, and I hope it does. And that does it for the video. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment with your top 5 favourite matchups for the year. Goodbye.